Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me as I speak. It's been 3 months since the day I returned from Japan, and today's Dharma message is about my Tokudo experience in Kyoto, Japan. After many months of study and preparation for Tokudo, which included 3 training sessions at the Jodo Shinshu Center in Berkeley, 12 Americans and 1 Canadian flew to Japan on October 31st, Halloween Day. In order to overcome my anxiety, I kept saying to myself, "You are fortunate to be one of the chosen few, so relax and enjoy this experience of a lifetime." We were so happy to finally land in Osaka after a 12-hour flight from San Francisco to Kansai Airport. Our journey began on a precarious note. As our group went through immigration, Robert Gabunko from Canada was questioned as to why he was here in Japan, and the authorities inspected his luggage. To add insult to injury, after Robert came out of the secured area, another plainclothes security person questioned him again as to what his business was in Japan. The only thing that we could think of as to why this happened to Robert was he was wearing a Navy hat, which I guess made him look suspicious to the airport authorities. When we drove in 2 vans from Osaka to Kyoto for one and a half hours, I became car sick during the drive, which was pretty torturous to me. I'm kind of like a dog where I need a lot of air in order to survive. Well, we finally arrived at the Honganji International Center, which was our first stop to allow us to get acclimated to life in Japan. Thank goodness it was nighttime so that no one could see me hunched over in the bushes, puking my guts out. Welcome to Japan. The International Center is a 4-story building with no elevators. Within the first hour, one lady in our group badly sprained her ankle because of a misstep on the stairways. We did not know if she could continue on for Tokudo, but thank goodness she was able to get around after a few days. For those of us who roomed on the 3rd and 4th floors, it was a workout having to go up and down the stairs several times a day. After a few days of this and eating a few vegetarian meals, I had already lost a few pounds. On November 4th, we were transported to the compound called the Nishiyama Training Center, which would be our home for the next 11 days. My team Betsuan mates had warned me that the training would be pretty tough. Little did I know what boot camp was Honganji style. After the registration, orientation, and settling into our dorm-like rooms, we sat through the first of 16 lectures to be given during our stay. Each lecture took approximately 2 to 3 hours, and on several days there were 2 lectures, one in the morning after breakfast and one in the afternoon after lunch. The lectures covered, among other things, basic ritual and etiquette, chanting, significance of Tokudo, religion, funeral service, and the teaching of Buddhism and Jodo Shinshu. Because of the physical and mental stress, there were several afternoon sessions where I thought I would literally pass out in the afternoon because of the rigorous schedule. Thank goodness drinking the Japanese brand coffee Boss saved me on many occasions in the afternoon. A typical day began at 5 a.m. when I would get up to clean myself and dress. At 5:50 a.m. until 6:10 a.m., our group was responsible for cleaning up and getting ready the Tai Mensho Hall, or audience hall, which also doubled as our classroom. And also we had to clean the adjacent bathrooms and hallways. After that, we met for 20 minutes as a group with our advisor and translator, Reverend Kuwahara from Berkeley, to go over the current day's activities, and also with one of the Nishiyama Senseis to go over any previous day's issues and situations that may have caused any problems. The training center has a very high standard of conduct in which the Nishiyama senseis were watching us with eagle eyes to make sure everyone was doing the task the Honganji way. Examples included making sure that we were properly dressed at all times during all waking moments, being reminded to have our slippers situated the correct way in the hallway when not being used in order to pay proper respect to the slippers which supported us during the day. Every day we attended morning services at 7 a.m., evening services at 4:30 p.m., and bedtime services at 7:30 p.m. Each group, in which there were 6 groups in total, was responsible for conducting several services. Our group was responsible for conducting 3 services. Whenever we sat in the hondo, we were required to sit with our backs straight. The service would typically last 1 hour because the Nishiyama senseis were critiquing each group conducting the service on the Naijin. This meant stopping every time someone made a mistake during the chanting. To our shock, much like a drill sergeant yelling at the recruits, the senseis were screaming at the individuals, with many of the participants Japanese nationals who were 60 and older. Despite being taken aback and really feeling sorry for them, we were told that this was the Honganji way. After the 3rd day, I was taking a leave for the duration of my stay in order to relieve my backache. During breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we were required to set up our cafeteria-like table with all the dishes laid out for everyone in our group before we ate. We could not eat until approximately all 80 of us were there, properly dressed and accounted for. Unfortunately, I held up a lunch session because I had forgotten my wagasa in the cafeteria. And the wagasa is the item that we wear around our necks. You know, I really didn't know what walking with your tail between your legs was until that moment. It was a very humbling experience. We ate in silence during the 10 minutes given to us for each meal. And I suspect the quiet allowed us to appreciate the food we ate and to clear our minds for the next upcoming session. We had to dress in the proper attire depending on what function we attended. And on top of all of this, we had to make sure that the robes not worn or the accessories not used were properly folded and placed in our quote, unquote, personal services or personal robe boxes. Nishiyama senseis made daily inspections of our boxes. And if your box did not meet their standards, you were identified by group number and box number during the mealtime and asked to redo your box. Towards the end of each day, we had a hot Japanese bath and went to sleep at 10:30 p.m. You know, I never really appreciated how a Japanese-style bath could relieve your body until undergoing the Tokudo training. And I didn't mind that there were 7 or 8 other guys with no clothes with me in the bath because I was just so tired, and each of us felt the same way. During our free time in the evenings, after the bedtime services, we studied for and took the 7-part Kadai, or exam. As I had mentioned in a prior Dharma talk, the Kadai included memorizing and correctly pronouncing in Japanese the various hymns by Shinran Shonin, our founder, correctly pronouncing in Japanese the Gobuncho, which are letters from Renyo Shonin, knowing the altar adornments on the onaijin and the proper forms of oshoko, or incense offering, and also, and finally, correctly folding our robes and gojagesa. Although we were required to we were required to take 2 written tests. One before we started the lectures so that the training center could see how much we knew going in, and one after we completed all the lectures so that the training center could see how much we had progressed. I am happy to report that all 13 of us successfully passed the Kadai and 2 written tests. However, during this ordeal, one person in our group unfortunately suffered a mental meltdown, but to her credit, she persevered and eventually passed. After completing the Kadai, we then participated in the Tokudo ordination ceremony conducted by Otani Kojun-sama, the newly installed 25th Monshu at the Goeido, or Founders Hall in the spectacular Nishi Honganji complex. For me, this was the highlight of our trip. The Tokudo group went through 4 rehearsals for the Tokudo ordination so that we would be mindful in doing it correctly, and more importantly, I suspect, not to embarrass the Nishiyama Training Center. To our collective relief, the ceremony concluded without any hitch. However, we froze due to the chilly night air in the Founders Hall, and I have a deeper appreciation, and I wish I had them, for the, I guess you call it leg stockings, that we could have worn underneath. Next morning, we were treated to a delicious breakfast in the inner chambers of the Nishi Honganji, where Hideyoshi Toyotomi, the first ruler to control all of Japan during the late 1500s, had greeted special guests 400 years ago. The food was served in black and red lacquered dishes and plates as part of the exquisite place setting valued at $1,000 each. After the breakfast, we paid a visit to the Mei Chodo Hall at the Otani Mausoleum, which is the final resting place for Shinran Shoni's ashes. Erected along both sides of the Mei Chodo Hall are the grave sites of successive Honganji Monshus and their wives. We were all profoundly moved as we stood on the sacred grounds of our founder, Shinran Shoni. After going through all this and reflecting back, there were 4 things that I had taken away from my Tokudo experience. Number 1, as one wise person told me, what you get out of an experience is dependent upon how much effort you put into it. Therefore, the more difficult the effort, the more rewarding the achievement. 2, have a greater appreciation of the Nishi Honganji and Shin Buddhism and the roles they play in the Buddha Dharma of A, wisdom or impermanence as it relates to the teaching of enjoying every moment of our ever-fleeting lives, and B, compassion or interdependence as it relates to people who have and things which have always supported us throughout our lives. Number 3, have a deeper awareness of just how wonderful our way of life is in America. So, let us stop complaining and not take our lifestyles for granted. And 4, to not have fear and be open-minded in experiencing things outside our comfort zone to enhance the quality of life so that we will have no regrets later in life in order to live a life well lived. Please join me in Gassho. In closing, let us always be mindful that life is impermanent and constantly changing. 3 months have passed, and my Tokudo experience now seems like a dream. I could have not done all this on my own efforts. I realize that I have always been dependent upon so many people who have encouraged me and helped me, not just for Tokudo, but throughout my life's journey. Though words are grossly inadequate, from my Dharma heart to all of those organizations and people, especially Reverend Bob and Reverend Patty, who have supported me during my Tokudo journey. I share my deepest gratitude by saying thank you so very much. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.